Hello, everyone. I'm gonna give everyone a second to join in since we just started. I will get into our intro really quick so we can get into this amazing partner panel that we have today. I'm going to start with an intro to me and the Emma Bowen Foundation. If you are not familiar with the Emma Bowen Foundation, we are an organization that is a pipeline to diverse talent. We help place minorities in media and tech companies around the country. And we have some amazing partners, a part of the family of Emma Bowen. And I actually am an alum of the Emma Bowen Foundation, and I also work at the Emma Bowen Foundation. My name is Niena Drake. I am the Senior Director of our All Multicultural Media Professionals Network, which we shorten as the AMP Network. And this is one of the amazing resources that we provide to our members of the AMP Network, which is career navigation and helping with assisting on resources and information on how to navigate the media and tech business if you are at any level, whether you're on the entry side, mid, or senior level. And we're most known for our internship program, but we have the amazing AMP network that is an extension of our alumni community. And we have members all over the country and partners all over the country as well. So that is the Emma Bowen Foundation, and I am very proud to present to you today's partner panel with our partner Paramount and their professional team that is going to discuss the business from a finance and media perspective. So I'm going to toss it over to our moderator today and our main connections at the Paramount company that are going to help us with this conversation. And I want to start by one, saying thank you all for joining us, and two, to everyone watching, please start by adding your comments and your questions into the chat so that we can see those as we're having the conversation and once we get to the Q&A section at the end. So please let me introduce Geraldine Lind and Catrina Jones from Paramount to get us started with this panel.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so happy to be here. Very happy to continue to be a partner with the Emma Bowen Foundation. I am Geraldine Lind, and I am responsible for our outreach and partnerships here at Paramount. I focus mainly on working with our DEI organizations, and I would love to share just some high-level information about Paramount as you think about Paramount and your next steps in your career, or if you are sharing with someone else some information about Paramount. And then when I finish, I will turn it over to our moderator, Catrina Jones. Okay, Paramount, who we are. Paramount is the home to premier entertainment brands that connect with audiences in every age group on various platforms across the world. We are truly a global brand. We deliver content to audiences across traditional and emerging platforms worldwide through television, streaming, and digital content, studio production, publishing, live events, merchandise, and more. Our company has a unique ability to produce premium and popular content for global audiences, and this enables us to maximize our business while positioning us to lead for years to come. Here are some of our many shows. Some of them you may be familiar with. Hopefully, many of them are your favorites. We have 325 networks, 4.2 billion consumer homes we're in. We're in 184 countries, and we have content in 44 languages. Paramount principles. At our core, our mission is to unleash the power of content. We want to create content that people want to talk about and share. Our goal is not just to react to or reflect culture and conversation, but to create it. We have 3 values that set the standard for how we should be working when we are at our best. That is optimism and determination, inclusivity and collaboration, and finally, agility and adaptability. Social impact. Social impact is a big part of our culture and our commitment to positive change. Our social impact has 3 pillars, which are programs and partnerships, employee engagement, and community investment. Here are some campaigns that have launched across our various brands with each campaign. Every brand takes into account the issues that matter to our consumers in order to create a campaign that fosters a deeper connection with the brand. At Paramount, we're committed to supporting a creative, diverse, and inclusive workforce. Our Office of Global Inclusion champions this effort and works to bring people together, celebrate differences, and recognize that through these connections, the business is strengthened. Annually, we also host an Inclusion Week. Full-time opportunities. We are hiring. And this panel tonight is focused on our finance team. We certainly have quite a few finance roles open. So if you are in the market and looking for your next opportunity, please visit our career site at careers.paramount.com. We have offices, of course, across the globe, and in the United States, we have offices in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Fort Lauderdale. So tonight, I would love to introduce you to our panel, and they'll give a little more context on what their roles entail. But we have Dominique Sellers, we have Josh Hill, Kim Hungund, and our moderator for this evening, Catrina Jones. Would love for us to be able to stay in contact with you. If you can grab your phones, take a screenshot, take a photo. The link to this QR code will also be in the chat. So if you cannot catch it, that is fine. We'll make sure that you have it in the chat. Thank you. Catrina, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Geraldine, and thank you everyone for inviting us and for giving us the time and space to talk about some of the great things that are going on here at Paramount. My name is Catrina Jones. I'm the Senior Director for Talent Acquisition here at Paramount. And my job here is to help find people, talented individuals like those that are on the call today, and introduce them to some of the work that's happening here at Paramount, particularly in the finance client, which is the group that I support and the group that our panelists are representing today. So to get that started, why don't we do a quick round robin of introductions where you can tell us your name, your title, where you're located, and what led you to your decision to join Paramount. Let's start with Dominique.
Everyone, I'm so excited to be here. I'm Dominique Sellers. I'm the Vice President of Supplier Diversity and Sustainable Sourcing here at Paramount, sitting within finance. I know some individuals don't know that, so I'm eager to make sure I make that clear today. I came from the Big Four, actually, prior to coming to Paramount, focused on everything from risk to audit, and then I did a lot of consulting, especially in the ESG space. And so that kind of led me to come to Paramount because I really wanted to delve into that and the detail for a specific organization. I'm based out of our New York office. And one of the main things that led me to Paramount is I did quite a bit of due diligence when I was trying to figure out where to go next, and culture was huge for me. Even from what you all saw in the intro video, as well as what Geraldine went over before, we just have diversity built into every aspect of the business, whether it's through employee engagement, the content that we make sure we show, even my role, making sure we're being very inclusive and intentional with all of the procurement that we have within the organization. And it really is just threaded throughout the organization. So not only was it the reason I came, but it's the reason I plan to stay because it really is a great organization to work for.
Thank you. And Josh, can you introduce yourself too?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Josh Hill. I am a director of FP&A here at Paramount. I've been here for about 7 years. I work specifically on the Paramount Plus domestic streaming service. One of the things that brought me here to Paramount was at the time when I joined in 2017, there weren't many streaming services available. So I started with the legacy CBS All Access service. And similar to Dominique, it was a culture that really kept me staying here for this past 7 years. So I'm excited to be here and excited to share my story with you guys.
Thank you, Josh. And Kim?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm too really excited to be here. And I just got to say, I am the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants, first gen college grad. And I know just thinking back to early career, there was so much I had to learn in terms of navigating the business world, which was new to me. So to see a foundation like this that's helping individuals do that, it speaks to my heart. And thank you for having me here. I've been at Paramount for 17 years, so I've been here for a long time. And I really think my journey started even earlier than that. So as of August 2005, I was working at DreamWorks Live Action. We knew that it was very likely that the company was going to be purchased by another studio at that time. And what I was doing within DreamWorks was very specialized, and being young, fearless, maybe a little impulsive, I decided, oh, I'm not going to see what happens with this position. Let me see what else I can do. And so I decided to go into consulting. And via consulting, flash forward to December 2006, I landed at the Paramount lot. This is my second consulting job. And full circle moment, funny enough, what I was brought in to do was close out purchase price accounting for the acquisition of DreamWorks. So just thinking back to those first days here, it was really electrifying. I mean, the hours were long. There was a lot of work to be done, but the team was amazing. And I felt like the work was impactful and important to the organization. So from the get-go, it really felt like a place I wanted to make home. So when that opportunity presented itself 4 months later, I jumped at the chance. And so I started as a manager within our motion picture group, focused on theatrical balance sheet. I had an opportunity to do our DreamWorks animation distribution reporting, which gave me full visibility to the P&L. Worked within really core accounting for 6 years before moving into the production finance org, which is where I currently am. I'm the VP of Development Finance for Paramount Pictures. So in my position, I'm really responsible for the financials related to all the projects before we officially move ahead with Greenlight. So I know when you go to the movies, you tend to think about that movie that you're watching, or maybe you're watching it on P+, but behind that movie, there's work to be done. So we're hiring writers, acquiring rights, and my team will oversee the financials for that. And the reason I've stayed here for so long, it goes back to what Josh and Dominique were saying. It's really the culture. I've always felt like there was space created to be heard and respected. And so that's kept me here and happy for the last 17 years.
Well, thank you for those answers and that kind of introduction into your journey. And I think Josh and Kim, you touched on something really interesting, the way that our business is segmented. So we talked a little bit about theatrical. So those are the movie releases. Josh, you said that you're working in the streaming division. So that's our streaming services like Paramount Plus. We also, of course, have our TV media brand. So like the channels like Nickelodeon, MTV, VH1, et cetera, et cetera. And if the people on the call are anything like I have been, I never thought about media outside of being a consumer. I want to see what's on TV, but I didn't think a lot about how much it costs and what were the finances behind it. So maybe you can share a little bit about the ways in which finance professionals contribute to the strategic decision-making and long-term planning when it comes to media.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. I really think behind, there are a number of factors that go into any business decision. And definitely one of those factors will certainly involve analyzing the finance behind it. So in that way, it's a very natural fit for a finance professional to be part of the strategic plan for a company. And in specifics, I don't know, Josh, if this is what you're going through right now, but for me, I'm right now head down, knee deep in the long range plan. So looking at the 5-year outlook for the company, I'm working closely with our presidents of production. I'm working with our business affairs executives and really creating what that financial roadmap is going to look like for the next 5 years, right? So we're testing and having conversations around assumptions. What does our slate look like? How will that impact what we're intending to spend on development? And it's this really wonderful opportunity to have these cross-functional discussions to create a shared vision of what we think the future will look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, I can definitely agree there. So Ryan, we're looking at the short-term plan as well as the long-term, the long-range plan. One thing that we look at on our side on a daily basis are the key KPIs, or key performance indicators. On the streaming side, we're looking at, acquisitions. How many people are coming into the service? If they're coming to the service on a free trial, how long are they converting to a paid subscriber? If they're converted to a paid subscriber, are they staying? So we call that churn. So looking at all those metrics to understand where the actuals are coming in and how we can better our forecast. Again, with a short-term view, my team, we work on a weekly pacing call where we look at these metrics weekly to forecast for the remainder of the month. We also are involved in the forecast plan, which is for the current year for 2024. And as Kim mentioned, the long-range plan, which can go out to 2029. So all of these efforts that we kind of do to interpret and understand the data contribute to the key decision makers for our key stakeholders and also for our senior leadership team.
Can I ask a question in regards to what I'm sure some viewers may be wondering? As far as the skills, because you guys talk a lot about the numbers, not just the money of it, but the data and the research and the numbers. Like what skills, if they're early or mid-career, does someone watching need to have in order to position themselves to be successful in any of these roles that you guys are talking about?
Sure. On my end, we do like a lot of data analysis. So my background was in banking and financial services. So that really helped me to catapult where I'm at today because we had to work with a lot of large files and data sets. Unfortunately, when I first started as an early career intern, I didn't really know what I was looking at, but being able to manipulate the data and tell a story, it helped me substantially in my current role. So, just pivot tables, lookups, in order to kind of get what information you needed from there, that was very helpful. One of the big things that I've noticed in my current role as well is communication. Written and verbal communication is probably one of the most important things that we need in our roles. And I remember being in my accounting courses and wondering why we had to do case study presentations or, written, papers in my accounting course. I'm like, this is not a writing class. But it was extremely helpful, again, to help me catapult to where I am in my career now, because as a finance professional, we're working with so many different individuals. And so our job is to really take the knowledge from the data science team, from the business intelligence team, from marketing, from PR, and really tell the story in a digestible format. Everyone doesn't really understand finance terminology, so we have to take it, I like to say, put it in a package and put it on a bow to wherever the end consumer is.
Yeah,
I love that perspective. Yeah. Go ahead, Dominique.
I was just going to say, right, not even being in the detailed financial planning and analysis side, I would just say in general, the expectation nowadays is that you have some at least beginner level skills in both AI as well as basic analysis tools, even if that's not kind of your formal job. So tools like Alteryx and Tableau, I would say, are some fundamentals that I know some schools teach and most are beginning to make sure that are built into their program, but they also have a lot of online education and tools to leverage. So I would say no matter what role you're in, you may not think that is required, but kind of standard data analysis, being able to sort through large amounts of data and come to conclusions, I would say is built into any finance role that you'll take.
And then I'll just add to that too, as a recruiter for these finance roles, most of our opportunities are requiring a bachelor's degree as a minimum. So when we're thinking about those skills, that's an important credential to have for most of our finance roles. But like Josh and everyone was saying, Microsoft Office Suite, you've got to be really good in Excel, your PowerPoint, your written, your verbal communications. But beyond that, your ability to be analytical and strategically thinking, being a good listener, and being able to really stay aligned to whatever the goals of the business are when you're making your good decisions.
I love that you called out being a good listener, because I really think a lot of it is about being an active listener and then taking that information to be able to connect dots that maybe, aren't apparent when you're first discussing something. There's so much value in that really when you're working within a large organization, just listening to what people are saying and being able to pull that all together to make it something new or a new viewpoint that may not be apparent at first glance.
And I mean, I think this leads us very naturally into another question because we all have such diverse backgrounds coming from different areas of finance, accounting, and just taking our career journey here. In your experience, what do you believe are some of the key lessons that you've learned that help you to be successful and lead you to where you are today? Maybe Dominique, you can start.
Sure. There's so many. But I would say I do have three that I usually focus on, at least, especially like early in my career. I wish someone told me, because I think a lot of times the biggest one is just never stop asking questions. I think early in your career, you think people are supposed to expect you to know things that you don't know, like you're new, it's fine. And even now, I'm constantly asking questions. I know I'm not always the smartest person in the room. I have my expertise, but we usually need expertise in another area to figure it out as a collective. So I would say never stop asking questions. Another is just making mistakes is okay. Own it, learn from it, grow from it. You might become an expert in it just because of that. And then lastly, just being super proactive in your career journey. It's really no one's responsibility but your own to really own that journey and the growth within it. And a lot of time, just that proactiveness has proven to give me like mentors or sponsors. I don't know if you all have talked about sponsors in the past, but it's a little different than a mentor in that it may not be someone that you choose, but really they choose you and are an executive at a certain level that are able to speak about you in the room and kind of in rooms that you would never be in to make sure you get opportunities. So I always say be proactive, because I've done some very boring projects, but I volunteered for them and it led to some great opportunities as a result.
Kim, do you want to chime in?
I agree with the points that Dominique is saying. And I think the other thing it's be curious. I love what you're saying at the very end, Dominique. I think that I heard a quote that's like, you have to prioritize your life or someone else will do it for you. And I always try to keep that top of mind, especially, when it comes to your career. It's really one of those things where you want to have a view of where you're trying to get to. And I know that can be challenging earlier in your career because you don't know what you don't know, but that's why asking questions is another great just piece of advice there, because in those conversations that you have with others, you're going to learn so much more about things that may be of interest to you, right? So it's always okay to say what you don't know or try to find out more about those things that you're interested in.
And I'll say from my end, one is to be able to thrive in an ambiguous space. I think on the streaming side, everything is not clear. It was fairly new when I first joined. And I was coming from a space where I was looking for an answer that was pretty much a 1-for-1. I mean, that's not necessarily will always be the case. So be able to kind of just thrive and take the information that you have on hand and tell your own story. That's been a big help for me. Two, the ability to understand the big picture, but understand the details. So you can understand, especially if you're coming in at an entry level, you'll be in the detail, you'll be in the number space, but also to understand as leaders is see their vision and their thoughts of how things should proceed. And then lastly, just a technical asset. Of course, Excel, some of the ERP systems or enterprise resource systems from the finance perspective. And we do ask we like to see some proficiency in there. But what I found is that honestly, sometimes you can just dibble and dabble in various systems and they all come together. You find they're pretty intuitive. On our end right now, we're dealing with a whole ERP project where the three legacy companies, Paramount Pictures, Viacom, and CBS, are all coming together on one finance system. And what I'm finding is that I'm pretty familiar with it in an extent, even though I have not worked in SAP. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's pretty intuitive to what we were working with the Oracle side of CBS. So, just getting exposure and experience at different systems, whether Excel, like Dominique mentioned, AI, Access, just different technical systems, so you will be familiar. So when you do have the opportunity to tap into, you'll be someone first there.
And I like what you said, Josh. You actually touched on it twice where you're talking about how you were in the beginning of your career and sometimes looking at this massive data set and saying, what am I supposed to do with this? So maybe you can start answering this question. If you can go back and give your early career self some career advice, what would it be?
For me personally, it's just relax. It will all fall into place. I remember when I first, I'm from Virginia, and I remember coming to New York. It was a little intimidating. I'm like, I have to know everything. I have to have all the answers because I just graduated and I was on a super high. And I don't know, I would just always stress myself out and think that I was not making the mark. And prior to me starting at Paramount at Transparent Mode, I actually was let go from a job. It was a real estate development company, and it just didn't work out. It was a mutual thing, and at that time I had been in New York for 4 years, and I'm like, well, maybe the corporate thing is not working out for me. Maybe I should just go back to Virginia. I don't know, figure it out. But this is not my space. I've given it a try, and it's just not working. Thankfully, I fell into Paramount's lap, and it's been a blessing ever since. But if I had to go back, I wouldn't have stressed out those 4 months that I was in between jobs because it was all going to work into place at the end of the day. So just give yourself some grace, submit to excellence, do the best you can, but it will all fall into place. So just relax.
Kim, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I love that. That's some advice I would give to myself too, is just enjoy the ride. I think I mentioned earlier, I've learned so much in my journey. And so there are a lot of things I would go back and tell myself. But one of the other things I would say is, how you got here is not how you're going to get there. And what that really speaks to is that you need to be ready to use your full skill set and not become overly dependent on whatever your one strength is or your top strengths are, right? You're going to have to use a variety of different avenues to continue to grow in your career. So early in my career, I did a lot of maybe boring projects too. I was very focused on just growing and perfecting my craft. So I put in the long hours. I made sure my work papers were great. I too came from public accounting. And, all of that made me a great teammate. I could be depended on. People know they could count on me to meet any deadline, big or small. And that did lead to success. I got good reviews. I found ways to secure promotions. But really, if you want to continue to grow, there are other things that you're going to have to do besides just the hard work. Right. And so for me, it became realizing that you're also going to have to be really comfortable in advocating for yourself. That's absolutely necessary. Another thing that I thought about would be just feeling comfortable and being your authentic self around others. That goes a long way. And that probably took me a little time to get there. Having a strong network and having a mentor, like all of these things, I just wish I would have leaned into them a little bit earlier in my career to help me continue to grow.
Yeah. And Dominique?
I think the one thing I'll just add is in line with what Kim said, and I think Josh brought it up too, of just like, I know you kind of said relax and you said being your authentic self. I think knowing that you're in the room for a reason. I think especially early in my career, especially starting at an organization that was not very diverse, it's easy to question that and those around you and maybe the schools they went to. And so I think it's very important to realize there's a reason you're in the room. There's value that you have to add to the organization. And so making sure, whether you always feel it or not, bringing that confidence to the table and knowing that you're adding that value is, I think, one of the biggest things that I wish I would have known very early in my career.
That's awesome. Now, all of you have touched on the fact that you started out in one area and then transitioned to where you're doing now. So kind of having a little bit of transition. Can you provide any advice for anyone on the call that's interested to understand how they can transition into media from other industries?
I think we're really fortunate to exist within the finance space because there are really these foundational concepts that are the building blocks and can be applied to a multitude of industries, right? So if you think of it that way and you really just go back to the basics, because I remember I had an accounting professor in college and he talked about accounting for widgets, which was really just his way of saying, no matter what you're accounting for, like this is what you need to know as your starting point. And then you take that knowledge and you can apply it to a specific situation. So I'd say when you're taking a look at making a leap and going to media industry from a different industry, just go back, look at what those foundational concepts are, and then apply them or show them to be something that could be transferred into the media space.
Absolutely, Kim, I 100% agree. I've had so many examples, whether it was work related or even being involved in college, where I was doing PowerPoints for extracurricular activities, that I would use those skills literally to kind of take, to evolve an existing project here in my role. One other thing too that I will add is that on my end, I did apply to Paramount blindly. So it was like no reference or anything. I was coming from financial service or at least development at that time. And just having a strong interest and knowledgeable of what's going on in the industry. So I had like a blog at one point, and again, I had no entertainment or media industry, but I was able to speak to some of the things that the world was asking for, such as impressions, CPM, sell-through rate. Didn't really know what they mean, but if I could talk to it in a sense, that really helped me to kind of do well in the interview. So knowledge of like some of those concepts that are going on in the media industry, and also to just overall with the state of affairs for the media industry. As we all know, linear or traditional TV is declining. Streaming is is what's now. So just knowledge of what's going on between all the big players in the legacy media space.
And so, Dominique, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to put you on the spot just a little, because Kim and Josh have more traditional finance roles where they're doing long range planning, short range financial planning, but your title is Vice President of Supplier Diversity and Sustainable Sourcing, which is also a role that obviously falls within our finance team. So for folks that are on the call who are not quite sure what that is, would you mind taking a moment to let us know?
Of course. I'm glad you at least put me on the spot about my actual job. So
Yes.
that's a problem. So yeah, I know that's a mouthful, but so on the supplier diversity side of things, some people may not know this, but I sit right under a procurement. I report ultimately up to the CPO. And our team's job is really to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible in all of the procurement opportunities that we have. There are national advocacy organizations for various demographics, whether we're just talking about women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, LGBTQ+, veterans, as well as a range of groups. And so my job is to make sure, okay, all of these businesses are important. They're all representative of the consumers that we have. We need to make sure that they're always having a place at the table when we have opportunities around business. I know earlier we talked about content for change, which is very focused on making sure that there's diversity in front of the camera. I'm a key part of one of the various groups that's making sure there's diversity behind the camera. Because as important as that is, we also want to make sure we're getting that economic impact to the communities as well in terms of dollars to their businesses as well as jobs. The second part of my job is related to sustainable sourcing. So making sure that we're procuring things in a very friendly way to reduce our carbon footprint. I know a lot of people have been hearing all about the climate change issues, all of the various things to sign up to reduce our carbon footprint. It is crucial to the Paramount business. And so literally my job and my team is responsible for making sure we're making those responsible procurement decisions and doing our part to reduce our footprint and kind of all of the business that we do, but also strategically as an organization when we think about our employees, recycling, and things of that nature. We actually have Community Day coming up, which was talked about earlier as well. And we're going to be doing something proactive to make sure we're making sure both of those missions are clear with some of our advocacy organizations. So that's the high level. The only other thing I would say is that also ties, both of my roles tie very naturally into ESG. I know everyone's heard about it, and I know everyone does not know what it means. So I do want to say it stands for environmental social governance, and it's really where we're thinking strategic about all the areas where we want to be responsible, and making sure we have governance and policies to support that. So you'll hear ESG a lot. Most companies have ESG reports. They are a great cheat sheet for figuring out everything about an organization. So I do want to put that out there as you all look for roles, as it's a really good place to find out every aspect of the organization and things they're doing and focused on. And usually if you bring up some of those things in an interview, it makes you look really good.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it was so important for you to highlight the things that Paramount does to walk the talk around being inclusive, making sure that people have fair opportunities to be partners, as you mentioned, both in front of and behind the camera. So I'm going to ask one more question, and maybe we could do a round robin on this one as well. I think all three of you that are speaking with us today have teams or have led teams in your career. And probably many of the folks that are with us today are thinking about how they could be a high-performing team member. So in your experience as a people leader, what are some of the qualities or traits that you've observed in your most successful team members? So for example, what did they do? How did they approach their work, etc.? Josh, would you like to begin?
Sure. I think one of the key qualities on my side is storytelling. As I mentioned before, we look at KPIs all the time, and we have to, tell the story to whether it's our business partner, our supervisor, or senior leadership. So I'm able to take, like I mentioned before, the data, put it in the package, and put a bow on top of it. Again, that's what I would know as storytelling. Two, someone who's willing just to roll up their sleeves and kind of get the job done. In our space, there's a lot of ambiguity. We don't really know a lot of the questions that we get asked. We don't really have the answer to, so we have to, find it by kind of pulling things together and going back to what I just mentioned, telling the story. So someone who doesn't mind rolling up their sleeves and trying to figure things out. And then lastly, someone who is just an overall, people person who's willing to communicate and just work alongside with everyone. We work with so many different business partners, so many different not so many different things, excuse me, so different personalities and so many people who have different backgrounds. So being able to, to withstand that and understand that this is kind of above you or above you as an individual, and be able to reach out and kind of get the job done by working with your peers beside you.
Thank you. Dominique, would you like to chime in?
Sure. I would say most of the people that really kind of thrive is those that, one, are proactive, like we talked about earlier, in terms of navigating their career. So having proactive conversations with the people they're working for in terms of what, would exceed your expectations, because I would say the expectations of different bosses are different, right? So what appeases one person may not do the same for another. And I think a lot of times people don't have those just kind of blunt, transparent conversations of what would exceed your expectations. What are you expecting in order to formally track that? We just, like most organizations have a performance process. And so it makes that a lot easier if you've proactively had those discussions throughout the career, because there's no surprises or anything to be confused about, because you've been constantly having feedback discussions to get better. And then by the end of the year, you've exceeded those expectations. I think the only other thing that Josh talked about too is like the technical part, and being the best in the technical space never goes away. So making sure you're proactively learning or learning about the new AI tool that came out throughout your career. We have tons of technical resources, but are you actually using them to make sure you kind of stay ahead of the game, and always can be some type of subject matter expert that people can refer to? I think those are the two things that usually are always something that makes my coachees or people that work for me thrive.
Awesome. And Kim, what would you like to add?
Yeah, all great points. So it's kind of hard to come in last, but here's what I'll say. Somebody who's very curious, going back to what we discussed earlier, and really wants to understand what we're trying to achieve, which I think Josh spoke to, right? So you're given a task, and it could be one thing and you can get it done, or you could know it and come back and show me that you're actively connecting the pieces to make it something new. So that's going to go a long way. And I think communication. So this is a fast-paced environment. My team, we have a lot, it's high volume. There are multiple requests that are coming in from different teams. So there's a lot that we're juggling. And I'm really depending on my team members to be excellent communicators, to let me know if their priorities are shifting, so that it's one less thing I'm thinking of, right? If they're showing me that they're really taking ownership over what their responsibilities are, even if they're including me and say, hey, Kim, let me know what I should be prioritizing on. It's just taking that step and communicating where we are on status. It's a game changer.
Yeah, strong communication. I like to think someone who's curious, who is just interested in understanding and not just executing. And also a person who is coming from a place of yes, like a person who really wants to lean in to be a team member. If there's things that need to be done, you know, you can rely on them to help out, and then they're going to execute well and take that knowledge with them for the next time that they'll be leaning in. Well, I mean, thank you. I think these were some great responses to the questions that we've had so far. I already see one question in the chat. Niena, do you want to switch over to some Q&A?
Yeah, I do want to get into some Q&A, and I just want to say you guys are stellar and amazing in so many ways, and I have so many key points that I'm going to round up at the end. But I actually want to start with a question. I know, Catrina, you are our moderator, but I have a question for you because I feel like a lot of the viewers who are watching live or will watch later, this will be very valuable for them to know, as a recruiter, what are you looking for when it comes to the interview, the resume? Are there any tips and secrets that you like, I wish people knew this. I wish somebody told these applicants to do this ahead of time, right? Any insight that you can share, you know, on that process that will be helpful for anyone?
Yes, absolutely. I would say number one, a well-written resume is your best opportunity to be seen. I'm on TikTok and I hear these TikTok people saying that the AI is going to screen you out and do all these things. I would like to know what AI that is that can help me to do my work, because I look at all the resumes, I read them, and if there's typos, it's not formatted well, or it doesn't really represent your skills well. Most importantly, the skills that are represented are not aligned to the position that you are applying for, then you're probably going to be pushed to the bottom of the list or maybe even off the list. So while it does take some work, you might want to revise your resume for each new opportunity that you're applying to, because that is your calling card. If your resume does not reflect your skills, there will be no follow-up conversation to find out if there's more to your toolkit than what you've presented. I think with the interview process in today's day in Zoom, folks are very comfortable. We're at home. We're, you know, wearing t-shirts and tank tops. That is not for an interview. You want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're presenting very professionally so that people can take you seriously as a future professional in their organization. I would say do your research, not only the research on the company, but the research on the role and the team. And also remember about yourself. It's very difficult sometimes to remember an example from a job that you did 6 years ago. But when you're in a forum where you're supposed to be talking about yourself, you're expected to remember about the work that you've done 1 job or 2 or even 3 jobs ago. So prepare by remembering what it is that you did at those different opportunities. Have great follow-up questions, write thank you notes. Those mean a lot to people still.
A lot. Thank you for mentioning that, because if I have 2 candidates that are side by side and one sending me a thank you note and saying, I really want this job, I'm so interested, I'm excited, you know who I'm going to go for.
Yeah, it could really be.
And I'll add one additional point too. I interviewed in person, so if you guys have any in-person interviews, I did handwritten thank you notes, and the team still talks about that to this day. So thank you note is very important, but if you can make it touch yourself even more part, do a handwritten thank you note.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it goes a very long way, and I can tell you, Josh's team loves him. So when he says they're still talking about it, that is the truth. And, you know, be enthusiastic. Even if you're an introvert, you can still be enthusiastic. You can show excitement and energy around the opportunity, or at least for this person taking the time to meet with you and speak with you. I think, you know, putting all of those things together slowly but definitely raises you above maybe some of the other candidates that were in the interview process.
Amazing tips. I hope you guys are taking notes. Seriously, because there's so many great things that you all can take tangibly from this conversation and use immediately. These aren't delays. This is like, go do this right now. There is a follow-up question in regards to formatting. You mentioned formatting, Catrina, And someone asked, do you recommend a resume that is creative versus traditional? Also, do you recommend 2-page resumes or a 1-page resume? My rule of thumb is like, if you don't have over 10 years of experience, why would you ever have a 2-page resume? You know, like if you're within the 3 to 5 years, it should be condensed to 1. You just have to be very strategic on your vocabulary and the way you communicate your skills and your abilities in that. You have to take very specific time in tailoring your resume to each job, but also your background and your experience. So 1 page is it. Catrina's probably looking at thousands of resumes on a weekly basis, and she doesn't have time to flip pages for you guys, unless it's a high-level executive position, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. So it is true that the average person looks at a resume probably less than 10 seconds. I'm going to say probably less than 5 before they make a decision if it's worth looking at some more. So if all of your good stuff is on the bottom of page 3, you're reducing your chances of a person being interested and doing a deeper dive on your experience. So regarding creative versus a more traditional template, well, it depends on the role. If you're a creative person and you're going for a creative role, then yes, you can have a creative resume. But if you're, let's say, a finance professional and you want to have a picture of the beautiful sunset from your backyard on your resume, then probably it doesn't resonate as well. So those creative elements should not be a reflection necessarily of your personality. We want to hire you based on your skills, and then your personality will shine through in the conversation. So that will diminish. Don't put photos on your resume. That's something that's more European, and the American style of resume writing is just your skills, so no photos. And then 1 page versus 2, exactly like you mentioned, if you're maybe a vice president level candidate or higher, or a strong senior director that has lots of experience and you fall over into 2 pages, that's totally fine. But if you're more junior in your career, you don't need to have a 2-page resume. It also speaks to your ability to effectively communicate, right? So if you have 6 years of experience, but you need 3 pages of bullets in order to express that, the person evaluating your resume says, this individual does not know how to raise up the most critical elements of what they need to communicate in a succinct and powerful way. And that may also be a reason why your resume is pushed to the bottom or off the list.
And to add, quantifying the results and value that you brought to the role and position that you worked in at that company, and not just listing bullet points of responsibilities. Hiring teams, whether they're the hiring manager or the HR team, they understand what the roles and responsibilities are generally of most of these roles you're applying for, but they want to see specifically what value you brought to that position, and in quantitative, like explanations, data, numbers. How, did you raise engagement? Did the money change? Did the value of the content change? Those things are very, very important for you all to top line. A couple questions. One came similarly from 2 people. What are some AI tools that you use at your departments that you all could recommend those watching to kind of research and learn how to utilize? I think that's for everybody.
We have a few approved tools internally. I think you have to purchase them though. Like Adobe's come out with a suite of tools that you can use in order to more efficiently put together certain presentations or 1-pagers. Microsoft Suite has a new tool set, which I'm excited to dig into more, where everything from PowerPoint and it helping you build that out to even creating a picture just based on a description that you come up with. There's such a wide range. The tool set is just so significant. I would say focus on what area you're trying to level up on, or even some organizations that are more technical will talk through in some of their reporting what they're focused on, where you can speak to that then. But it goes a little bit beyond ChatGPT, which I know everyone talks about.
Any additional ones, Joshua, that you may recommend?
Not on my side. I don't think it's available to the masses. We do have some internal tools that we use, but nothing I can really suggest for the attendees.
Okay. So another question that came through was, how does the organization's culture encourage and provide numerous learning opportunities for all finance team employees on an international level?
I can actually jump in on that question. Well, one strong example that Josh and I share is that we are part of the Finance Diversity Working Group here at Paramount. And part of the mission of that group is to offer learning and growth opportunities to people who are underrepresented in higher levels of leadership. It also helps to coach and manage the managers of folks who have diverse teams and teach them different skill sets to empower their teams to do what Dominique mentioned earlier in our conversation, to really take the responsibility of driving their own career ship, guiding themselves. So when it comes to learning, there's lots of formal opportunities that are highly invested. We spend money on it. We also have self-guided learning opportunities where there's things like LinkedIn Learning, but there's also things beyond LinkedIn Learning. You can take courses from Harvard Business School. There's tuition reimbursement. We offer $10,000 a year in tuition reimbursement, so you can go and get a whole degree on Paramount's tab. That's a lot of learning that you can do. But there's also lots of teamwork and projects and collaborative things that happen on a regular basis where you're learning from other professionals who are right by your side.
Those are great resources for anyone who is looking at benefits beyond the actual role and monetary, right? Like, that's something to consider for everyone listening, is what are the other benefits that the company is offering? And it sounds like Paramount has a world of opportunity beyond just what you're getting paid, that are benefits to the role that you may be awarded at the organization. So that's amazing. I'm familiar with education reimbursement at a couple organizations, but not to that much. That's a really great amount of reimbursement. There was a question in the Q&A that was asked, and if anyone wants to add anything, I believe we did answer this earlier, but if there's anything additional, what are some tips and advice you have for individuals to stand out when applying for positions at Paramount? I feel like we answered a lot of that. If there's anything anyone wants to add to that, we can kind of expand on that any more specific to Paramount, maybe.
I can add one more thing. Or Dominic, were you going to?
No, I was just going to reiterate just the point around like just the research. And I always bring up ESG reporting because that's newer and it just gives you more information than I think you've been historically been able to find out about things going on in the organization. When people come to the table and like at the end, when they ask questions that I know are very easily publicly available, it's not as enticing. That person isn't as enticing to me when I'm like, you could have found that out on your own. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Yeah, that's a.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that because I did have someone ask me a question, but you could tell that they had done their research ahead of it. And it really just like won me over. It was a thank you email with a question in it. That was something that really just got me thinking. I'm like, oh, this is absolutely the kind of person I would love to have on my team. Someone who's pulling everything together, trying to make sense of it. It just showed so much initiative. I loved it.
And the one thing that I was going to add is cover letters. They're like 50-50 on being read. I'm going to be honest, not everybody reads them, but I've gotten hired because of my cover letter before, where I really didn't have the skills on my resume to show, but my cover letter explains all of my transferable skills and my enthusiasm. It got me in the door and it got me hired. So that sometimes they're not read, I'm not going to lie, but they can make a difference when they are reviewed.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing up cover letters. I know we are running out of time. I have one last question, and then I'll round up some of the highlights that I noted as you all were sharing. There is a question that says, do you all have any tips for communication in the corporate space for entry-level professionals who may shy away or be unfamiliar with advocating for themselves?
I do. I think part of that is just being very reflective of where you are in your journey so that you're comfortable in communicating where you are, where you intend to go, right? So you don't want to show up to the conversation unprepared. You definitely want to do your work ahead of that. I think in an organization like Paramount Global, we're very fortunate. Dominique mentioned it. We have a formal process where we give feedback. It's twice a year. You can definitely have more conversations. I think most managers are open to that type of relationship. So you should be pulling and viewing your manager as a partner to you, right? Because we're here to achieve business goals, but we're also here to help each other grow professionally and personally. So I think that that all becomes part of the conversation. It goes back to what Josh was saying, like, enjoy the ride. Like, this is part of it. I look back at my career and so many people helped me, right? And I probably could have leaned into those relationships a lot more if I had just let my guard down and said, yes, I do want your help, right? You're offering it, I'm going to take it, and here's where I'm trying to get to.
Wonderful tips. With respect to time, I'm going to round everything up. Thank you all for asking your questions. Some of the top things that I noted in the conversation was know and learn how to be a great storyteller, especially with data and analytics. Be an active and good listener. Learn software programs and technical systems that are required or expected for the role. Be proactive, be proactive, be proactive. And ask about what the expectations are so that you know you are moving in the proper direction. Get sponsors and mentors, not just mentors. And relax, give yourself grace. Be ready to use your full skill set, not just the one thing that you may be walking in the door with them knowing. There may be something special in your back pocket that could be utilized and elevate you in that position. Get comfortable advocating for yourself. Have a strong network, build those relationships, know that there's a reason that you're in the room for sure, and build some self-confidence within that. Master great communication skills, learn about the industry, do your research, read trade magazines, follow people on LinkedIn, ask questions, stay abreast of the latest technology and any technical skills that you can do to better your skill set in the business. Be interested in understanding, not just doing. That was Catrina's no laugh. Did I miss anything?
That was great.
Okay, good. I was taking notes. I hope everyone that was watching was as well. Those were some of the top line things that stood out to me. I want to send a special thank you all so much to the Paramount team. This is one of a series of panel discussions that we're doing with Paramount and their teams. Special thank you behind the scenes to Geraldine, Lind, and Jennifer, who are not on camera, but thank you to you all for organizing these amazing professionals for this discussion, this panel. I hope you all were taking notes and took away some valuable, tangible action items that you can go and use immediately. Thank you again to our amazing panelists, Kim, Dominique, Joshua, Catrina. Thank you all so much for being so upfront, honest, transparent, and helpful to everyone that was watching live and that will watch this as a recording. And I just want to say thank you to everyone on behalf of Emma Bowen Foundation, and we appreciate our partnership with you all and your time so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have an amazing rest of the week. Be productive, be positive, and stay tuned for the next Paramount panel.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.